You know that feeling when you're about to start something, like anything, really, and there's this little voice going, it has to be perfect.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
if it's not going to be amazing right away, why even bother? We've all been there, I think, wrestling with that.
Yeah, that urge for flawlessness, it can be really
Now,
strong.
that's exactly what we're digging into today.
Right.
Yeah,
Because what happens when that desire, that need for perfect, actually starts holding you back, so it stops you from even, taking the first step.
exactly. That's the core of this deep dive, this
Yeah.
whole idea that maybe done is better than perfect.
It's a really compelling idea.
Yeah, and to get a good handle on it,
Yeah.
we've pulled together, well, a bunch of different viewpoints. We've got some really interesting stuff from a Reddit thread on productivity,
Mhm.
some practical advice from Forbes on tackling fear of failure, a Psychology Today piece about shifting from perfect to progress, even some deeper findings from a psychology journal about perfectionism itself, plus a couple of YouTube videos really championing done over perfect, and a blog post about the benefits of embracing imperfection.
So, a real mix of sources. Our goal today, really, for you, the learner, is to unpack why letting go of that tight grip on perfection can actually be, well, incredibly helpful.
Right. How it can lead to more progress, maybe less stress, and just generally boost your well-being.
And crucially, we'll explore some actual strategies you can use to start shifting that mindset. It's often deeply ingrained, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, so where should we start? Maybe productivity. That's where a lot of us feel this pressure, I think.
Good idea. Yeah, let's kick things off there. We looked at this Reddit thread, and there was a user, Dr. Tallenburn, who had this kind of breakthrough.
Oh, yeah? What was it?
Well, they realized that just focusing on finishing tasks, even if they weren't, perfect, made them way more productive. The example was making the bed.
Getting the bed. Okay.
Yeah, instead of aiming for like hotel level precision, they just started straightening things up. Imperfect, sure, but it got done.
Huh. And that helped.
Apparently, yeah, it taps into something important about procrastination, doesn't it? That first
Yeah.
step, even if it feels a bit, well, half-assed, as they put it,
Right.
it can build momentum. It breaks that cycle of just not starting because you're worried it won't be good enough, lowers the barrier.
That makes sense. But there was a counterpoint in that thread, too, wasn't there? Someone called King's Color raised a concern.
Yeah, a really valid one. They asked, essentially, if everyone just aims for done, won't quality just plummet, for
Oh, yeah.
product services?
Yeah, that's a fair question. It's not about just doing sloppy work, is it?
Not at all. And I think another user, FU Head 2016, kind of nailed the nuance there. They
Right.
pointed out that it really depends on the context.
How so?
Well, if you're, say, manufacturing airplane parts, done isn't good enough, right? Precision is everything.
Obviously, yeah.
But for personal productivity, like those everyday tasks, or creative work, or learning something new, the dynamic changes. Aiming for perfect often leads to getting stuck. Analysis paralysis.
So it's about knowing when good enough is actually good enough.
Exactly. And speaking of creative work, another user, 50 Camels Worth, shared this great story from a photography class.
Oh, I remember this one. Tell us about it.
Right. So one group had to meticulously plan the perfect shot. The other group just go out and take tons of photos, loads of them.
And the second group, the quantity group, actually ended up with better photos, right? Which seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does, but it highlights the power of iteration,
Right.
learning by doing. 50 Camels Worth pointed out that those crappy early versions, those bad rough drafts, they're often necessary steps.
Like practice runs.
Exactly. Each imperfect attempt gives you feedback, shows you problems you didn't anticipate. You learn and adjust in a way you just can't if you're only planning for perfection.
You have to actually do it. It's like that saying, best is the enemy of the good. I think JD20 mentioned that in the thread.
That's it. Holding out for some impossible ideal stops you from achieving something that's actually pretty good, or even great.
And someone else, Benji1989, suggested aiming for maybe 80% complete, rather than getting totally bogged down on that last 20%. What's the thinking there?
It's about diminishing returns, really. That final push for perfection often takes a huge amount of effort for a very small improvement in the actual outcome.
Right, you spend ages tweaking tiny details.
Exactly. So aiming for 80% is just more efficient. It stops you getting stuck. And Kaidamak mentioned this GBB approach. Good, better, best.
GBB.
Yeah, like consciously deciding how much effort a task actually warrants. Not everything needs your absolute best, perfect effort. Sometimes good enough, delivered on time, is much better.
That sounds like a good way to avoid burnout, too.
Definitely. Which brings us to the flip side of GBB, that do it right or not at all mindset that Jessel mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds noble, but
But it leads to a graveyard of unfinished projects, right? Because the first attempt never feels right enough.
totally. So this shift towards done
Hmm.
and iteration seems really key for productivity, for just getting things moving.
It is. And that leads us nicely into the psychological side of things, the actual toll perfectionism can take. We looked at a Psychology Today article.
Right. The one about rising perfectionism rates,
Hmm.
especially among younger people.
Yeah, and what's striking is how it's often seen as this positive trait, like a driver for success. But the reality, it's linked to a lot of emotional difficulties. Why do you think that is?
Well, the article mentioned that all or nothing thinking. If it's not absolutely perfect, it's seen as a total failure.
Exactly. That black and white view sets up this constant fear of failure because the bar is just impossibly high. Almost anything feels like falling short.
And it goes deeper, right? The article said perfectionists often tie their whole self-worth to how well they do.
Precisely. So a mistake isn't just a mistake, it feels like proof of inadequacy. It triggers intense shame, self-criticism. You can see how that connects to anxiety.
Yeah, it sounds like a really vicious cycle. And the article stressed that perfectionism often isn't a help, it's actually a barrier.
A huge barrier. It stops people trying new things, taking risks, because the fear of not doing it perfectly right away is just too strong.
But people often resist letting go of it, don't they? They worry they'll lose their edge.
They do. But the Psychology Today piece offered a really useful reframe. Aim for excellence instead of perfectionism.
Excellence. How is that different?
Excellence is about healthy goal setting. It embraces learning, it allows for mistakes, it focuses on growth and striving, not on some rigid, unattainable ideal. It's much more flexible.
And part of that is changing how you see failure.
Absolutely. Seeing it not as a catastrophe, but as a learning opportunity, a normal part of being human, really. Like that Edison quote about the light bulb finding 10,000 ways not to do it was part of the process.
Right, it's data collection almost.
In a way, yeah. And another perspective from Be Calm with Toddy linked this relentless drive for perfection to high-functioning anxiety.
Ah, okay. So that constant need to control everything, avoid flaws,
Yeah.
it could be driven by underlying anxieties.
It could be, yeah. Recognizing that connection might be another key to shifting things.
Okay, so we've seen the impact on productivity, on well-being. What about the more formal academic research? We looked at that Hewitt and Flett journal article from '91. What did that tell us?
What's really key from Hewitt and Flett is that perfectionism isn't just one thing. It's multidimensional. They broke it down into three main types.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's self-oriented perfectionism. That's the internal drive, setting really high standards for yourself.
Right, your own personal quest for flawless.
Exactly. Then there's other-oriented perfectionism. That's holding other people to those same incredibly high standards.
So being very critical of others if they don't meet your level.
Pretty much, yeah. Expecting perfection from those around you.
Okay. And the third type?
That's socially prescribed perfectionism. This is the feeling that other people expect you to be perfect. Family, bosses, society. That you need to meet these external demands to be accepted or avoid criticism.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of pressure, like you're constantly being judged.
It can be immense, and the study looked at the downsides, the negative outcomes linked to these types.
And what do they find?
Well, across the board, links to things like feelings of failure, guilt, procrastination, ironically shame, low self-esteem.
Procrastination. That seems odd for perfectionists.
It happens because the fear of not meeting the perfect standard is so great you avoid starting at all. But yeah, the study also found connections to more serious issues: alcoholism, eating disorders, depression, even certain personality disorders.
Goodness, so this really isn't just about being meticulous.
No, it can have significant mental health implications. The research also highlighted common thinking patterns, those unrealistic standards, focusing only on failures, harsh self-judgment, that all or nothing thinking again.
Right, magnifying mistakes and dismissing successes.
Exactly. And interestingly, that socially prescribed type, feeling judged by others, that was linked specifically to perceiving others as critical and having unrealistic expectations, possibly connected to things like borderline traits or anger, maybe from feeling constantly under scrutiny.
So the big takeaway here is that it's complex. Understanding these different dimensions is really important.
Crucial. It's not one size fits all.
Oh, yeah.
Recognizing which aspects might be driving you could be the first step towards change.
Okay, so With that deeper understanding, let's talk strategies. How do we actually start to overcome this? We saw that Ford's article using the analogy of learning to ride a bike.
Yeah, I loved that analogy. It offered some really practical lessons. What was the first one?
Start by stopping, which sounds weird, but it was about learning to use the brakes first, gaining control to reduce the fear of falling.
Right. Build that basic control, then the fear of moving forward isn't so overwhelming. Makes perfect sense.
Then break it down. Just like we heard in the Reddit thread, big task. Chop it into smaller, manageable pieces.
Creates those mini successes, builds momentum. Absolutely. What else?
Find the optimal balance. Don't push too hard and burn out, but don't be so cautious you never get going. Find a sustainable pace.
Crucial for avoiding that burnout cycle perfectionists often fall into.
And finally, get expert help.
Hmm.
Recognizing when you need an outside perspective, a coach, therapist, mentor, someone objective.
Yeah, sometimes friends and family are too close, right? An expert can offer different insights.
Definitely. Then there was that YouTube video, Daniel Holloway, talking about massive imperfect action.
Ah, yes. The idea that perfection is an illusion and trying to control perception is futile. Just act, even imperfectly.
Why is that imperfect action so powerful, do you think?
Well, Holloway argues imperfections make you relatable. Vulnerability connects people. Seeing someone else isn't perfect actually helps others believe in their own ability to try.
It humanizes you, takes away the intimidation factor.
Exactly. And he really stressed letting go of the fear of looking bad because that fear just paralyzes you now.
That's a big one. We also saw Lauren Leone's blog post suggesting mindfulness. How does just being present help with perfectionism?
She explained that mindfulness, just noticing your thoughts and feelings without judgment, creates distance. It gives you space between the perfectionist urge and your reaction.
Ah, so you can choose how to respond instead of just automatically criticizing yourself.
Precisely. You gain awareness and intentionality.
She also had those interesting creative experiments, like using weird colors or your non-dominant hand. What's the point of that?
It's about disrupting rigid patterns, intentionally introducing imperfection in a safe space, like art, challenges your fixed ideas of good or right. It encourages playfulness, exploration.
Kind of shakes things up. And her therapist's mantra.
Shoot for okay. I love that. So simple, but it just lifts the pressure, doesn't it? Allows for progress without that crushing weight.
It really does. And Marie Forleo had that practical RESET method for energy. Remind us.
Right, RESET. Review your day, schedule breaks, make them easy to remember, set alarms, step away from screens during breaks.
Why are those breaks so important for perfectionists?
Because the relentless drive often leads straight to burnout. Stepping away gives you space to recharge, gain perspective, and avoid the exhaustion that actually fuels negative thinking. It's about sustainability.
Makes sense. And finally, we saw mentions of therapies like CBT and ACT from Better UHQ.
Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. They offer tools to challenge those negative thought patterns, build self-compassion, and learn to accept imperfection while still moving towards what you value.
So lots of potential tools and approaches there.
Absolutely. And the overall benefits of embracing imperfection seem huge. Less fear of failure, more risk-taking, more creativity, better self-acceptance, more fulfillment, even stronger relationships through authenticity.
It really comes down to focusing on progress, not some impossible standard.
That's the heart of it. Shifting from chasing an unattainable ideal to valuing the journey, the learning, the growth.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the main message seems pretty clear. Chasing perfection. It can really be an obstacle.
A major one. It can hamper productivity, hurt your well-being, and limit your growth, personally and professionally.
Yeah, the sources we looked at really point towards the value in, well, embracing imperfection, recognizing that done often is better than perfect.
And consciously focusing on progress, on learning from everything, the successes and the setbacks.
So for you, the learner, maybe think about just one small area. It could be anything, a hobby, a task at work, even just tidying up, where you put a lot of pressure on yourself for perfection.
Yeah, just one area. Try easing up a little. Experiment with letting it be just done or good enough. See what happens. Observe the results, how you feel.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. What new possibilities might actually open up for you if you started embracing good enough more often?
What might you finally start? What risks might you take? If you could just let go of needing everything to be absolutely flawless from the get-go, definitely something worth reflecting on.